And you can see over here, like the midsection and hairline area has a lot of miniaturization, a lack of density. You know, donor area that he could possibly use, maybe a little bit retrograde in the temporal area, I don't know. But he has a solid, in any case, this is a solid recovery. I think he's a hyper responder to Minoxidil, perhaps maybe Dutasteride. Over here. Hey guys, before we continue this video, I would like to mention that we now have liposomal minoxidil sulfate on my website, folligens.com, folligenz.com, and if the order queue is available and open, you can order it there. We're running it as a cosmetic. There are other sort of botanicals inside of this particular topical that are pretty helpful when it comes to conditioning the hair. So that's at folligens.com, folligenz.com. That's folligenz.com. Go check it out and maybe even try it out. See you there. Hello everyone and welcome back to yet another hair progress review video, but today we're not on Reddit anymore. We're actually on my Discord server, and we're going to be looking at one of my subscribers. His name is Sam, also goes by the name of Aspie Norwood 1, but I'll just call him Aspie, or maybe I'll just say Sam, because I think that's more politically correct. In any case, on my server, we actually have this section called Progress Tracking, right over here, where you can see everyone's progress that they're tracking when it comes to their hair loss treatment regime. In any case, going back to Sam's journal over here, the title of it is 1 year plus, or 1+ year on 1 to 1.5 milligram dutasteride, oral dutasteride, and topical minoxidil, unquote. And we can essentially, from these 4 pictures over here, get an understanding of the progression, where he started out, very much miniaturized midsection and hairline. Look at that. This is very, very miniaturized, and even some, Sebderm, as you can see, this yellow patch over here, and the, scaling and crust over here, skin crust, along with the dandruff in the hair over here. This guy had a lot of hair loss. Now, we already did a podcast together recently, and it will be coming out hopefully after this video goes up. But wow, look at the improvement, right? Just from here to here, right? Granted, he grew out his hair, but you're not going to get this. I say this in every video like this, but you're not going to get this kind of coverage if you don't take treatment. You're not going to get, that is not going to turn into this, right? Without any treatment. You can see the volume and the density, the thickness of the hair. The treatment that he took revitalized his hair. So let's get into his journal and have a quick look. I'm going to scroll past all these pictures real quick. We can get a nice before and after over here, actually. So that's cool. But let's look at his journal, because I think it's useful. So from what I remember, this picture of him over here, he was 17 years old, and that's when he noticed he was starting to have some hairline recession issues. And he notes that that was in 2022. And that's, again, when he first noticed the temporal recession. In 2023, the start of 2023, his hair started to go fast. So just looking at this picture right now, we can see that the hairline's pretty weak. Even going past the hairline and towards the interior of the scalp, we can see that there are some miniaturized areas, maybe some areas with not enough density, but we can already see right off the bat that the midsection is starting to become an issue, and the hairline is an issue too. So he says over here, the ending of 2023, he started finasteride and minoxidil, and he had a massive shed, but Finn gave him breast pain, so he had to drop it, which made the hair worse. And when he says which made the hair worse, essentially He's been on finasteride for what could probably be most of the year, right? So he was on finasteride for a decent amount of time. He had a shed, and then he started to grow back some hair, but then he had to quit finasteride because he was having some breast pain. And guys, okay, that is a very rare side effect, but side effects are possible, but they are rare. However, people's side effects typically go away with prolonged use of medication. Your body adapts to it. And again, it's pretty rare to get side effects, but in his particular case, he had side effects on finasteride. From what I remember when we had the podcast interview, he told me that he didn't have any side effects on dutasteride. So, dutasteride being a more potent 5-alpha reductase inhibitor, for whatever reason, didn't give him that sort of breast pain. But it could be from other things like working out, right? Because he did mention he was working out at the time. That could be a possibility, but maybe it's the finasteride. In any case, he quit finasteride and he went through another shed, right? So he had 2 severe sheds that year of 2023 because of when he started and then when he quit. And you can see over here, like the midsection and hairline area has a lot of just miniaturization, a lack of density, to the point where you can actually line up what would actually, I think, what you would call a Norwood 6. Like if I were to look at the strong hairs, the area where it looks like he has strong hairs, it's like this sort of Norwood 6 pattern. And the midsection and hairline is essentially destined to miniaturize and thin out at the same time in the near future had he done nothing about it. And this picture over here kind of makes it a bit clearer, right? He has this sort of X-shaped, hair loss issue going on in the midsection and also in the crown as well. And his hairline, again, rapidly deteriorating. So he says in 2024, he began to cope with wigs or hair systems. Now, my heart goes out to anyone who's young and has to use a hair system. I think he's like either 19 or 18, maybe 19 in this picture. And it's tough, right? Like having a hair system this young, it doesn't really want you to be in social settings, right? Because of fear of what may happen to the hair system. Maybe someone touches your hair, or maybe the adhesive glue that you use messes up. And then your hair system flaps up and then everyone sees it. It's a social killer, so to speak. And again, for him to deal with this at such a young age, the severity of his hair loss, it's tough. It really is tough. So my heart goes out to him and anyone who's young and dealing with this sort of issue, right? I'm 24, I'm going to be 25 soon. And when I look back at my experience, I didn't have as severe of hair loss as this guy did, Sam, as he did, but I genuinely do feel for him and anyone in that sort of condition, because it's not something that's fair for a young guy to deal with. But that's the hair system he had. It looks fitting. It looks fine. But he told me in our podcast that when it came to going outside in the rain or even going to social events, he didn't want anyone to touch him because of what he feared, what could happen if the hair system came off. That sort of mental stress is not worth it. You just want to stay home if that's constantly on your mind. So he says over here, August 2024, the wigs became a nuisance and insecurity became worse, reshaved, and saw my hair condition to be dire. Started dutasteride and minoxidil right around here. So guys, look, this is what happens when you don't have an effective treatment. This is what happens when you have a prolonged exposure to DHT. This is what happens when you're DHT sensitive. He's around maybe 19 years old at the time of this picture. 19, pushing 20. And he already has a Norwood 3 diffuse thinning. This could probably be a Norwood 5 if he's not careful within a year, had he not taken treatment. And this is why I tell everyone to start treatment as soon as possible. And even sometimes, the younger you are, possibly the more aggressive you have to be if your hair loss is severe, right? Because you're very DHT sensitive. Your onset is early if it's happening in your teen years and you're in your early 20s. Address it. Me personally, I think finasteride's a waste of time. Just hop into dutasteride, and maybe over time, if you're not comfortable with using it long term, take less dutasteride and fall back into using finasteride. But you have to find out what immediately works for you. And I think dutasteride would be that sort of option that would tell you if you're immediately going to have some sort of results. When I say immediately, I don't mean like within a day or so, but I mean like within the course of a year. You kind of want to know if you're going to respond to the complete and total annihilation of DHT in your scalp tissue, right? Not complete and total, but you know what I mean. You want to take the more potent thing so you can gauge just how good of a responder you might be. Because if you're on finasteride, it might stall it, and then you might find out 5 years later that you're losing hair again. I don't think you want to find out what camp you belong to with the finasteride group. Just go to dutasteride. But in any case, this is where he's at. Look at this. It's kind of crazy the amount of like quality, how high quality this picture is. I can see a lot of details, but you can see there are some gaps where there aren't any hair. Or maybe there's like one hair follicle shooting out one single hair. That is really bad. Let's go to the next picture. So this is him, side view. Again, you can see the top is very much miniaturizing. He does have a solid, donor area that he could possibly use. Maybe a little bit retrograde in the temporal area, I don't know. But he has a solid occipital and parietal area where he could possibly do a transplant in the future if he needed to. So another picture, right? Yeah, he was rapidly losing hair. And a picture over here. This is a severe hair loss. He says Nord 3, but really, if we just ignore the diffuse thinning, this is like a Nord 6, in my opinion. If he didn't do anything about it, definitely the makings of a Nord 6. And then his hair slightly grown out a bit. You can see it's a dyer, as he described himself. So now, December to January-ish. So December 2024 to, January 2025 of this year. And you can see the recovery already. What's happening, right? So his hair responded well to treatment. He grew it out a bit. The density is increasing. He does have a little bit of a dandruff issue. We talked about it in the podcast. He had seborrheic dermatitis as well. So seborrheic dermatitis is going to cause microinflammation, which can make your hair loss worse. So microinflammation has to be addressed. You have to solve your seborrheic dermatitis. So he says over here, Sam says 4 to 5 months more. So 4 to 5 months in. Hair seems to be rapidly growing. Hairline closing in from Nord 3 plus to a Nord 1.5-ish. So that's a crazy improvement, going from a Nord 3 to around a 1.5, maybe if we're going to be conservative 2, but it looks like a 1.5 to be fair. Maybe it's coverage, but again, you're not going to get this kind of coverage over here if you have this kind of hair over here. So anybody who's going to cope and say he just grew out his hair, that's not how this thing works. If he grew out his hair, you'd be able to see a lot of gaps. You don't get that kind of density. Look at this. Really good density. Really good volume too. The hair just looks healthy. Here, cool. So let's move on to the next picture. So this is around May 2025. He says his hairline seems to be restored and hair seems way thicker, and it looks thicker too. So he's actually pulling back his hairline for us to see. I mean, looks like a Nord 1, maybe 1.5. Now he does have these little Sebderm spots over here. So he is dealing with seborrheic dermatitis still. These yellow blotches. But in any case, this is a solid recovery. I think he's a hyper responder to minoxidil, perhaps maybe dutasteride. Over here, very, very thick hair quality, nice hair quality. Has a little bit of a wavy kind of texture to it, so that's good for coverage. But also, in general, his hair just looks healthier. It looks like it's just recovering. He's responding well to treatment. And he's probably responding well to treatment because he's young. If you're young and you have severe hair loss like this guy does, you should still give treatment a shot because maybe your hair follicles haven't been dormant for that long, so you can possibly save your hair follicles. So now, October 2025, current hair, he says, is wavier, thicker, and he says it's the best he's ever had. And he even told me he dyed it a bit, but still, you can see it, right? You can see the improvement that he made. It looks, more dense. A lot of curls are starting to form, and it's a recovery, in my opinion. He recovered because he was quick to treatment, and I'm happy for the guy. Really, I'm happy. Because this is where he started out, right? About maybe a year or two ago. And he says Norwood 3? Man, this looks like a Norwood 6. Like I said, at some points, it kind of looks like he was dealing with a Norwood 6. Maybe if you just ignore this like forelock area, it clearly looks like his midsection was thinning out rapidly. But this was a good recovery. And it just goes to show that you guys can, you can make a recovery if you try to get to treatment as soon as you can. You went from this all the way to this. From this over here, right? Scroll up a bit, all the way to this, right? Look at the improvement. Day and night improvement. Fuzzy puts this meme over here, 20 weeks of Vinny popping. The chia pet. So before and after, as he so neatly termed it for us, listed out for us. So we have this sort of diffuse thinning, very, very diffuse thinning in the midsection, all the way up to here in the after where his curls are back. So amazing quality. And congratulations to you, Sam, for this improvement. Look at this over here, right? There's no way this is a transplant too, guys. Like, you're not going to get this sort of natural kind of look, this very, very natural look with a transplant. And the density is, very much recovered. So I think he's a Norwood 1. A lot of his hair follicles were dormant, but with treatment, it revitalized them, and there's really nothing much else to say other than congratulations to you, Sam. Also, one more thing, guys. I just wanted to let everyone know that I started a company called Folligens. That's Folligenz. And we are selling liposomal minoxidil sulfate at a 10% and 5% concentration. We're running it as a cosmetic. There are other sort of botanical solutions in it. There's no propylene glycol and no drying alcohols in it. There are phospholipid liposomes along with shea butter esters. In any case, guys, thanks for watching this video. And yeah, let's give Sam all the praise and congratulate him. If you want to check Sam out, links in the description below. Anyway, peace out.